Well, good morning, all. Tommy G, middle-aged millennial, here in the Gold Coast studio, and we have Dr. Rouse about to pay us a visit into the house because we are going to be talking about matters close to the heart yet again. It's our third and probably our final one for now episode. And we've got Peter there. We're going to add him in. We're going to add some other stuff to fix here as well while we try and work out what's going on. And look at that! Someone else has taken over the Rouse studio in Queenstown. The boss of the house did not make
Actually,
that
not the boss.
It isn't. Oh God, I always get that mixed
Not
up.
Kitty Cat. That's the small one. That's the little daughter.
That's the daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the daughter ain't small.
Well, she's small. The daughter is one of the smaller ones.
Oh, all right.
It's the boys that are big.
The boys that are big. Yeah, the Toms. Yeah. Apart from this Tom.
Yeah.
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 How are we doing, Pete?
Good.
Good.
Look at this blue sky out there for a change.
Oh, I think it snapped.
Mm.
Yeah. Geez, we got it the same. My God, we got some blue. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, how was Easter?
Yeah, it was okay.
You didn't do an Easter egg hunt or anything? Well, there we go. It's still going by the looks. Yeah, I've got some.
Just having my coffee.
Is that right? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, chocolate and coffee. Absolutely awesome together. I've got some dairy-free chocolate in the fridge. My little guy flew up last night. Calling Gatter, picked him up late last night, and he's been gaming this morning, and we're about to get him out there. I've already been out there for a little run, and going to get him out there. He's about to do some cross-country stuff at school, apparently. So there you go.
There you go.
There we go. All right. So probably our final episode for now on the heart, matters close to the heart, but we're going to talk about some of the right sort of exercise to support the heart. We've talked about nutrition. We've talked about supplementation and so on, and genetics. And now we're going to talk about moving. So, in fact, moving, and I reckon not moving, if we have time. We're going to quick fire 30 here. But let's start with the right exercises to support cardiovascular health. And maybe the other flip side of that, which is doing nothing, resting, digesting.
Well, the first thing you got to look at is individualization. So we've got to have a look at the individual.
As usual, right? Okay.
As usual.
Yeah.
Couple of factors you've got to look at. First off is, are they pre or post event? Have they had a cardiovascular event that may be needing a different kind of method or approach to their conditioning work compared to someone who has not had an event? So That's the first thing in consideration. I'd suspect probably most of your listeners probably have not had an event.
I would like to think that's the case.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll go on that basis because going for a post-event is a little bit more in-depth approach to it, and something you'll probably want to work with your cardiologist and a group that you want to work with to do that.
Right. Okay.
Because it depends how severe the event was too. So you may be at a point where sitting up out of a chair will make you breathless. So it depends on the severity of the event that you've occurred, and whether it was heart, or it could be a stroke as well. Could be kind of blended in there as well.
So can we explain the difference between the two, Pete? Because they're kind of you can get the two types.
Brain and heart. Well, I mean, one's the blockage in the heart and one's in the brain. So that's your primary two main differences you're looking at there. And then parts of the brain can be killed off because of that starvation. And the same thing with the heart. Part of the heart can be killed off because of the starvation of oxygen.
Right, yeah. And that can happen for two reasons though, right? Because one can be you're getting a whole lot of occlusion over time with different lesions and stuff, with cholesterol trying to fix things, and and you get angina and you get all these symptoms beforehand, or one of these lesions pop. You've actually got enough scope, one of them pop, and then the blood tries to clot it, and it causes the clot, or that clot then floats up into the brain. Would that be?
Yeah, that
correct?
can. That could be one too. It could be just also part of that plaque could break off and then lodge in another part of the the artery coming around and lodging in the brain somewhere too. So there's a number of causes.
Wow. All the blockage.
It's actually surprisingly more common. The mini strokes nowadays seem to be more and more common. I'm reading up about it more and more. I'm seeing a lot more of the mini strokes. Whether they're better diagnosed now, which is one factor I think is kind of playing into the increased diagnosis of mini strokes.
So we see them more now because we can see them. Nothing changed. We just see them more. We understand them.
Yeah, okay. I think that's part of it. I mean, it's like with cases like Alzheimer's and stuff like that. I think the diagnosis spectrum has increased slightly.
Right.
So then you have more kind of fit in that category. Autism is a classic case of that when they open up the category of autism. So autism was already on the rise, no doubt. Right. But then they saw an increase when they opened up that diagnostic window to include, they kind of include a lot more groups into that autistic window. And that increases statistics on that too. I mean, it was already going up phenomenally anyway, but often they do this, and the same thing happened with cholesterol, diagnosis of high cholesterol too. They started lowering that number lower and lower and lower so they could get more people into that group.
Right, interesting. Yeah. Well, you can sell more drugs that way too, I believe. Anyway.
Well, that's probably the main factor, yeah.
Oh, okay. Cynics plus here, but probably reality at the end of the day. Anyway, all right. So, right exercises. So let's say not had an event, and maybe some symptoms, maybe not, but heart health, preventative.
Well, I start with breathing exercises because one, I want to get that breathing down properly. So when they do start to get into a more stressed environment with the type of exercise we're doing, their breathing is going to account for that. So the better oxidation and better breathing and less compensation. Right. So often I'm testing people and they have a reverse breathing pattern. So I don't want to go too deep on that because that's more hands-on stuff. But what we're looking at is if you lie on your back, you breathe in deep, you're going to see when you breathe in deep, your tummy should expand so the diaphragm can lower down and increase the oxygen to your lungs. Right. We actually often see the reverse, more in females than males, but we often see the reverse where you tell them to take a breath in and they pull the tummy, like they're sitting there and you tell them to take a big breath in, they take a big breath in and the tummy goes inwards.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It should, when you breathe in,
should be coming out,
should be expanding.
Yeah, like a balloon.
Right. Yeah, I mean, not so much, but I mean, you definitely shouldn't be getting a hollow vacuum in the tummy from taking a big breath in.
They all think it's going here, and it should be building down here first. Expand the stomach.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's another factor too with the breathing pattern that they'll do compensations like through the trapezius. So instead of breathing through the diaphragm and expanding the rib cage, often they can't expand the rib cage because of restrictions in the intercostals and the actual structure of the rib cage itself. They'll have to elevate to breathe, and you will see this a lot. People breathing hard, and they'll be lifting their shoulders up to breathe, rather than expanding the chest out. So that's why we go through before we start into a kind of intense exercise with these people. And I do this with anybody anyway, but more so with someone who's kind of got a cardiovascular risk because we want to maximize the the oxygen uptake.
And both hands.
And then.
Yeah. Okay.
And Michael was there too. Right. What you want to do then is focus on correcting the breathing pattern if they do have a reverse breathing pattern, and work on strengthening and reprogramming that breathing pattern. Once you have that down, then we can start about getting into the exercise component.
Interesting.
Even though the breathing exercises are exercises.
Right. And it's a physical thing you got to do, right? But and we're not going to go into breath work in general here, but there is so many benefits to breathing.
Exactly. I mean, you could use it as part of your meditative state that you want to go into. Yeah. But one way I get people to do it is just 5 minutes when they're lying in bed and do it in bed before they go to sleep. Just 5 minutes just there every night, and it's about the whole thing about this entire process, it's more important about frequency than it is about volume.
Right.
And that's the whole thing with the conditioning training that you're doing. It's more important frequency. I'd rather you train 7 days a week. Let's say you got 3 hours to train in a week.
Yeah.
You could either do an hour a day for 3 times a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you could divide it over 7 days and do every day for 25 minutes.
Right. And you would prefer that,
20
right?
minutes.
Frequency.
Yep. By a
I'm
long
hearing
way.
that volume, so more volume of that rather than. It's interesting. What can I ask without going down a rabbit hole? But why is that, Pete?
Because one thing you're doing is you're constantly putting that conditioning. You're not letting that. There's a recovery curve, okay, that occurs. That's the easiest way to explain it.
Right.
So you get overcompensation. So you have a curve like this where you've created adaptation,
Right.
okay, and your body recovers. But then what happens is you get over recovery where you actually start to decline in your performance or your adaptation to that exercise. Yeah, I mean, we're talking micro, but you know that adds up. If you're doing this all the time, then you're over recovery. And another thing too is that moving the body every day is much more better for you, and the studies shown us than doing more exercise in a couple of days and then rest, doing nothing for a few days.
For a few days, right? Absolutely. I mean, I've always been advised that no longer than 48 hours off the exercise.
I mean, even with strength training, with the like a muscle group that takes a little bit to recover, like the quadriceps, which lower body training, 72 hours you're fully recovered.
Right.
On the this is on lower body quadriceps strength training with maximum strength training.
Right.
So, I mean, realistically, if you do a lower volume, you probably recover in 48. 72 is the top maximum recovery time.
Right.
So 48 hours, 72 hours. So let's say, look at my training. I do upper body one day, lower body the next day, upper body, lower body. So between my body groups, I have a full 72-hour recovery period before I repeat it again.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, I'm doing, I'll do some strengths and then I'll do a little bit of like endurance, it's cardio. And then strength, so I'm doing my muscle work every second day, my cardio every second day. So 3 cardio, 3 power, basically.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So, strength, more strength, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because power is a little different. Remember, power is, that force generated by speed.
Right.
It's the rate of movement over that range of movement that you're doing. For example, Olympic, you have high load, high velocity. Well, you got high load, high velocity, which is your typical Olympic lifting. Lifting a heavy weight overhead, snatch, clean.
Right.
And then you have your low load, high velocity, which is meaning things like medicine ball training. So you're doing high explosive work with a medicine ball. Load is low, but you're usually working that on a time frame, working under 12-second period. So you're doing explosive short bursts, 10 to 12-second explosive movements. Where on Olympic lifting, you're usually working on a repetition basis, 1 to 3 reps on the Olympic lifting.
Got it.
So when you're doing low load, but that comes down to kind of other stuff we get into a little bit later on with the conditioning. So the metabolic conditioning, I kind of start people off with. So metabolic conditioning is what people kind of think about as being aerobic exercise, but everything is aerobic. Aerobic means, oxygen, okay? So metabolic conditioning is just more of a broad term for that because we mix a lot of different stuff in there. So we have, like your traditional endurance training.
Right.
So your traditional air, I love you too, Anne.
Bit of love.
Yeah. So, so you have your traditional endurance training, which, could be anything to start with. And people should start this way with just walking.
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise running. With running, there's an old saying that we used to have in the conditioning world was, you don't run to get fit. You get fit to run.
Right.
Meaning you want to be fit before you start running.
Right.
And that includes some strength foundation and joint integrity and stability before you start loading that with running. So a good way to start this endurance training for someone who hasn't been doing much is start walking, along with everything else we're going to talk about. So just start walking.
Right.
If you have to, do a treadmill, but treadmills are not advisable because of the mechanics of it. But get outside would be best, but it depends on the time of year and the environment you're in. If you're minus 40 degrees Celsius, probably not a good idea to go for a walk. But not that it gets like that here. But find out what you can do. even like a slow-paced bike, stationary
Okay.
bike
Okay. So
inside, just a steady pace.
okay. So what
Just
sort
a
of
steady pace. I mean,
heart rate? What sort of heart rate or percentage of your 220 minus your age
oh,
kind of thing? Or
we don't want to. Well, okay,
no,
that
just take
whole
it easy.
thing. Yeah, take it easy, not to see too high rate, but the whole heart rate, maximum heart rate thing is kind of misinformative. It was actually
Right.
basically where that came from was they needed a figure to use for study, for
Right.
research.
Right.
So that's where they came up with the 220 minus age thing, because of the fact that they needed a figure to work on purely for research basis, and it wasn't based on any actual information or data from previous studies. It was actually based on nothing other than, okay, here's a figure we're going to use for this study that we're doing, and that's where it all came from.
Oh
So there's actually
God.
no real basis for that heart, like the maximum
Right.
heart rate percentage mark. There is no true basis behind it. But it's a good market point for people starting off. I'd say it's for a beginner, someone who hasn't done exercise.
Yep.
It may be a useful tool.
Right.
But for anybody who's
Fit.
from intermediate to advanced,
Right.
it's right out the
Like
window.
doesn't mean anything. Okay. All right. So I know we're tight for time. About another 10 minutes then. So for heart support, so what I'm picking up from you is regular exercise, even almost daily. We've got Ann Western Murphy there saying too. So just keep moving throughout the day, which is what I've learned as well. And stand up, sit down. If you're at the desk, stand up, sit down. About an hour alternating perhaps. But you're saying get on the bike and just get moving or go for a walk.
Do anything a little bit more intense, something you can control the intensity of. So with walking, you can increase the pace and stuff like that.
Right.
Eventually, that would progress into what we want to do down the line, is maybe some running, if that's what you're capable of doing, unless you've got some severe joint injuries or something like that.
Yeah.
Then the next step after that, which we could, these are done in parallel, by the way. So first off, the endurance training, then we can actually throw in, after you get really good at that, we can throw in also additional, what we call loaded endurance training. Now, loaded means that you put a weight vest on and go do the same thing again.
Right.
Watch what happens to your heart rate.
Ha. Yeah, no doubt that'll increase, right? And then it'll have to adapt again.
You could. Yeah, so it causes an
stronger.
adaptation. So loaded. So that's why I like a weight vest for training. I train with a weight vest. Mine's an actual plate carrier for like a bulletproof plate carrier, which weighs a lot. The gear setup is about 25 kilos just for that stuff, for all the gear on it.
Right.
So I'm out running with that on. Yeah, you see your heart rate just skyrocket. Even just walking with that. So you can go from from endurance training into loaded endurance training. Right. And that could be one day of the week.
Those ones with you can get those wrist weights or something, or put them around your ankles or something.
No, I don't like them on the extremities that much because of the joint strain that can occur.
Oh yeah.
So the weight vest, So the weight vest gives you a little bit better, and also you can load a lot more, and you want to start loading it. So you can actually adjust the load. You can get those weight vests for $25, $30. A backpack, yes, but it's not the same. It's not the balanced distribution of the weight when you start doing long weight. But yeah, then you can look at, okay, let's do something more practical. Go for a hike. Take your backpack with you, with your gear in it, and go for a hike. And that's the same as your loaded endurance training.
Okay.
And then you're going, and then with your endurance training, change and alternate the terrain you're going on. Either go for a flat terrain and then maybe a little bit of hill work involved there as well.
Okay.
But still keeping it that kind of more steady pace aerobic, what we call steady pace aerobic training. That could be done. You could do that once a week.
Once a week on that part. So that's the hiking.
On that part.
Loaded part.
Yeah.
Right? The rest of the week you're on the flat. Just could be the beach as well.
Well, no. One day we do what we call the steady pace aerobic, which is the endurance training we're talking about. Okay. Another day a week we might do interval training. So another day a week we do interval training, which will be, most people kind of fartlek training, but interval training is a little bit longer than the traditional fartlek training. So we're talking maybe start off with, I usually start people off with 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Now that could be anything from a short run for 30 seconds to using I use a rope here, a big heavy duty rope. It depends on what equipment you have around you.
Oh yeah, one of those sort of things.
Yeah, a big heavy rope. It's like a rope of a ship. Yeah.
Right.
So, so there's a whole lot of stuff you can mix into interval training. So that can be worked around that. And then you can progress into loaded, which means you do that same circuit, but with a weight vest on. So you always want to work towards that loaded interval training, loaded endurance training, which has a lot more benefits once you get conditioned. Never start there.
Right, and that's once a week. That's once a week, right? The loaded.
That could be once a week. Yeah. Right. Either loaded endurance or the loaded interval. Once you get up there, you can do it. Yeah, once a week's usually enough. Okay. And then another day of the week, you might want to do what we call circuit type training. Right. Which is you're going from one exercise to another, to another, to another. This is one I use for boxers. So when I trained up a boxer for a world title, I was getting him to do. He was fighting Lennox Lewis at the time, and
can we know who
we were doing David Tua.
Okay. Wow.
He's a New Zealand boxer.
Wow. Cool. Okay.
So if you have a look at him, he's actually got a gym in South Auckland there actually too. So if you have a look on Facebook, he's on there. So what we used to do was a circuit. We used to have, let's say for cardio, I'll show you what we did specifically for him. We'd do boxing 3-minute rounds, 1 minute rest, 3-minute rounds, 1 minute rest, 12 rounds for a professional fight. Okay. Right. Okay, so we did 3-minute round circuits with a medicine ball, 1 minute rest, 3-minute round, and we're doing explosive. Each exercise was 15 seconds. So we're kind of matching the energy system that he was working on. So we'll work 15 seconds on each exercise. So we'd have a total of 6 exercises repeated through twice, so we get the total 3 minutes time. Okay, and then we'd rest 1 minute and then repeat it, rest a minute. That most people, I've done this with people before as well, like after I've trained David, and most people would last maybe 2 to 3 rounds of that. Literally, it's that hard. He was, before the fight, he was doing 12 rounds, like no problem. Well, no problem, but he was doing 12 rounds of that. And funny enough, in the fight, he had to go all 12 rounds. So his fight with Nick went 12 rounds. So we had that conditioning for that. So the circuit training could be useful for that. Most people I start off with maybe with 3 exercises or 4 exercises, depending on their capacity. And this is something we want to build up to with the medicine ball work. Maybe we'll start with medium pace and then build up to more explosive. Maybe do 1 minute on, 30 seconds off, 1 minute on, 30 seconds off. So it's almost like the interval training, but you're changing multiple exercises within that time, but you're not having a rest between those exercises until after that full minute has gone through. Right. So that's another one you can add in there. And I usually do this after my weight training. So for me personally, I do my weight training first, and then I throw in this cardiovascular work after that. For me, because the strength training is a very important component for me. Right. And if I did my aerobic work first, it would impact on my strength training more than if I did my strength training first and then did the aerobic training after. That's impacted less. It's still impacted for sure, but not as much as the other way around. So if I do my aerobic work first, it's going to really impact on my strength training. So you're better off doing strength training first. If you only got one window opportunity to train, do a little bit of strength training and then do your cardiovascular work. Okay. Go on. And then there's a couple other things that I like to throw in there, which is I mix it up depending on my time frame I might have at the end of my workout. Some days I'm rushing to get to do something else, okay? Yeah. So we can do what we call complexes combinations. Now, complex and combinations are, like, for example, I have a barbell, and I'll go through a routine of different exercises. So a complex could be, I do a set of, like a hang clean, then I go to a press, come down, do a front squat, back up, then come back down. So I do maybe 4 or 5 exercises in a row, and I keep repeating that. Right. The other way is I'll do 5 snatches or five cleans, and then I'll do 5 presses, and then I'll do 5 front squats. So you do those in almost like a circuit, but you're just not putting the barbell down for the entire time. I have some examples on my website on that, and you can go.
Your website's getting crazy right now. Looking at it the other day, and man, that's growing. That thing, it's getting huge.
Yeah, quite a big database there.
Yeah, it's massive. Big tool.
So those two.
Big tool for people. It's gonna have some impact. Well, there's a lot of great stuff in there.
more for practitioners, but yeah,
Right.
definitely a lot of information there. So then the last one I like to use as a alternative, especially if I've got a short time frame and I want to combine it in with my strength training, is breathing squats. Have you heard of those before?
No.
Try doing 20 reps or 50 reps with squatting with a weight, with a barbell.
All right, so
So
you're carrying it like here?
but then what you can do is you can do no barbell on your shoulders. So you're doing
shoulders.
barbell back squats on your barbell back squats,
there.
okay? For example, okay?
Right. Okay, got it.
So you're doing your traditional weighted squats. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So what you want to do though is you can do this a number of different ways. You might do 5 reps and then take an rep expansion,
Right.
and then back down, 5 more reps, rep expansion, back down. Or you can do each rep. So you do 1 rep, expand the reps with your breathing.
Right.
That's why we call them breathing squats. And then back down, back up, breathe, back down, back up. That
Breathe.
really, you should see the heart rate after doing 20, 30, 40, 50 reps of that. It's phenomenal.
Wow. So with these people, I mean, people are going to go, oh no, I've got potential heart issues or something, or I've got some occlusion and stuff. Am I going to be putting too much load in my heart, and that's kind of dangerous? I should kind of like just keep it all very low and sedentary almost, or, you know,
Well,
so I
yes
don't
and
want
no.
to break something that's already kind of seeming like it's a bit.
Well, someone's got high risk. I mean, it's all about the implementation, you know, like how you apply the stuff. So as I said at the beginning, for someone who's, you know, like in that condition,
Yeah.
a basic walking might be enough for them to start with.
Right.
But then they'll start to adapt to that, and maybe
Right.
a little bit of loaded walking. So the big difference between walking and loaded walking can be huge. You don't even have
Yeah.
to start running.
Right.
If you want to make walking more difficult without having to run, just throw a weight vest on with a very low load. Don't start
Right.
it too heavy. You can get the weight vest that you can adjust the weight on.
Where can you
Okay?
get these?
So
Can you get these like on Wish as well? Wish.com? Weight vest?
I've seen a weight vest on Wish, but they don't have the weights in them. They're just a vest.
Right.
But you can go to they're pretty cheap in the sports stores around the world. I mean, you
Okay.
can go to here in New Zealand, Sterling Sports. You've got
Yeah.
all the different sports stores in every country, whatever they may be.
Just do a Google search. Okay.
Yeah, most of those stores will, even I have seen them in Kmart before, I think.
Okay.
You know, so
Right.
they do have them. You don't need a high-end model. Unless you start to get really serious about it, then
Yeah.
you might want to get one of the high-end quality models that you're going to be using all the time.
Right.
I even had in my commercial gym, I had a high-quality one, and it was just being used so much, eventually it does wear out. I mean, they don't last forever. So, you know, it does pay to get sometimes a little bit better quality on those. If you use it for yourself, rather than a commercial gym, a commercial one will last you forever.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's, you know, someone like that, I'd start them off walking and then maybe loaded walking and then build them
Right.
up. And
Right.
loaded walking can be with dumbbells, so it's almost like a farmer's carry as
Right.
well, if you had to. I
Loaded
mean,
walking.
That's the
That
difference.
was the carrying
Yep. Dumbbells or
Right.
what we've got farmer's walk bars, but that's done with short distance, not over a longer distance day.
Right.
Because again, we don't want that loading on the joints, on the extremities. That, you know, like we were saying before with the ankle and wrist straights. I mean,
Right.
if you're going for a long walk with those, I wouldn't advise it. But
Right.
short distance with loaded carry. But then with loaded carry, where you want to do it with shorter distance, high load.
So you're doing what, half an hour, perhaps?
Well, I mean, it depends on the individual.
Okay.
So
Okay.
some interval training, someone might be struggling to get 10 minutes out of that. The circuit training, I mean, the circuit work with the medicine ball like I was doing with the boxer, you know, David Tour. As I said, people 2 rounds in that, 6 minutes with a minute rest in between, they were dead.
Right.
So that's 7 minutes, you know. So I wouldn't give that to the average person though. I'd make sure they've got some baseline conditioning before they do that, so they can get. If they can't do two to 3 rounds of that, which I can like to see 3 rounds, they're not ready for it. Okay, so yeah, so they're not ready for that circuit training with the medicine ball work. If they can't do if they're doing it like I like to do it in a 3-minute rounds,
Right.
like, you know, replicating the boxing. And remember, all your cardiovascular or your metabolic training is specific. So if you're training for a certain event, your cardiovascular training should be specific. Your strength training does not have to be specific. It can be generalized.
Huh. Okay.
Because, strength training generalized, cardiovascular training needs to be specific. Remember, if someone's a swimmer,
Yep.
how much land work do they need to do compared to water work? I mean, the only land work they're doing is mostly strength training stuff to stabilize the joints. All their
Right.
cardiovascular work event work is done in water.
In the pool.
And it may not necessarily be the stroke they're doing all the time because they don't want to repeat the stroke, but I might be targeting that. But we trained Olympic swimmers before, and thing was then was we never try to replicate swimming in the gym.
Right. Okay.
It was all basic strength work. Get the overall strength up, and sometimes compensating for the damage or the overuse that sport can create.
Right.
And that's what you're trying to adapt to in the trying to adapt to that in the gym, and then their sport specific would be their metabolic training would be done in the pool. And same thing for a runner. If you want to run, best thing you can do is run. Now, if you want to reduce injury, strength train and run. But your strength training is not going to necessarily try to replicate your running.
Right.
It's just going to get you stronger, more stable.
In other areas so that you can run better. Okay. So better support. All right. So I guess the main messages here then, as we sort of head towards landing this one, is that start somewhere and slow and kind of low. Regularity, consistency, and how often you do it, and ideally, almost every day you're doing something, you're keeping active. Even Ann Western Murphy said even keeping active during the day, which we know is a great health benefit. And like she said, take stairs. Instead of the elevator, take the stairs. Yeah. Right. So then we've got the incidental exercise. Park the car further from the door, not the closest car park to where you need to go to.
Don't spend half an hour looking for a park next to the door when you can take 3 minutes to walk there from the furthest park.
Right. You missed out on all that fantastic exercise. So it's a build-up. It's doing a bit every day. And as you build a bit more, you're adapting. Don't let it go for more than 2 days, because then you just come back to kind of where you started. About 24-hour break, ideally. 48 hours.
48 hours. For strength work, for strength work, 48 hours to 72 hours.
Right.
For cardiovascular training, every day. And as I say, you can do it every day, but I wouldn't do the same thing every day. As I say, try to mix it up amongst the stuff.
Right.
At the moment, if you're doing walking, then you can do that every day to build up your capacity.
Right. Okay.
But once you get a baseline, then you want to mix this up with all the stuff we went over through today.
Right. Okay. So there we go. They are the key messages to give you strong support for a strong cardiovascular system, let alone all the other benefits.
All the strength training, you should be doing strength training on top of all this.
Right. Okay. Always strength training. That's where I've really lacked. I mean, I've always been the runner endurance. It's kind of easy for me. And I've been slack on actually building, and I only started doing that this year, starting to do that work. So looking forward to the extra benefits I'm going to get out of that. All right, Pete. Any final words on this one?
Well, as I said before, your frequency is more important than volume. So
there it is.
Get out there every day. Get out there every day and do something. Every day.
Consistency.
Even if it's only 5 minutes, do it.
Right, there we go. And I think that becomes a self-management thing too. I think psychologically you're going to be happier with yourself, and you probably get some endorphins going if you just get out and move a bit. So it's consistency, and even if it's a short amount of time, just do something every day is a great way to start and continue. So awesome. Thanks for the quick fire 30 there, Pete. We'll be seeing you again next week, no doubt, and we're going to move to a different subject, which I don't know what that's going to be yet. So we're going to have to think of something pretty cool. We'll see, right? Keep it a surprise. Tomorrow we have Ann Western Murphy, who's been very loyal here and watching this episode as well. Hopefully you learned something, Ann. And we don't even know what we're going to be doing with Ann tomorrow, but we are going to be here, and we've got that's not Kitty Cat.
No, that's Mummy Cat.
It's Mummy Cat. Is that Jasmine?
That's the mummy. No, that's the baby. Zoe.
Jasmine's the dark one.
Jasmine's the human one.
Oh, jeez. That's it. I give up. Yeah, right. Okay. Oh, well, I think we'll be talking about neural stuff next week. Perhaps we should do that. As long as I don't forget.
I think so.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Good to see you out of Easter, and we'll catch you in the next one, guys. Remember to enjoy life right here, right now. When, Pete?
Today.
All right, guys.
Today.
See you soon. Bye.
All right. See ya.